Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up within the hour. Iran carries out wave of arrests and multiple executions of people suspected of links to Israeli intelligence agencies. United States says it's open to negotiations with Iran over future of its nuclear program. Plus, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky laments as some European countries depend on Russian oil. Let's begin The World Today. Iran has launched a wave of arrests and multiple executions of people suspected of links to Israeli intelligence agencies in the aftermath of its 12-day war between the two countries. Iranian officials say the arrests follow what they describe as the most serious infiltration of Iranian intelligence services in decades, allegedly by operatives linked to Israel's Mossad. Authorities suspect information fed to Israel played a part in a series of high-profile assassinations during the conflict. This included the targeted killings of senior commanders from the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and nuclear scientists. The precision of the killings has deeply shaken Tehran, leading authorities to target anyone suspected of working with foreign intelligence. During the conflict, Iranian authorities executed 3 people accused of spying for Israel. A day after the ceasefire, 3 more individuals were executed on similar charges. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence says it's now in a relentless battle against Western spy agencies, including Mossad, the CIA, and MI6. State television has aired alleged confessions from several detainees, purportedly admitting to collaboration with Israeli intelligence, although human rights groups warn many may be forced and extracted under duress. Critics also say the campaign is not just about espionage, but also an attempt to silence dissent and tighten internal control, with fears that more executions could follow. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister has admitted that nuclear sites sustained excessive and serious damage in last week's Israeli and U.S. airstrikes. Speaking to state television, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said assessments are underway at bombed facilities, contradicting the country's supreme leader. Just hours earlier, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that the strikes did not disrupt the country's nuclear program, accusing President Donald Trump of exaggeration. Mr. Khamenei insisted that U.S. attacks were largely ineffective. The foreign minister also said there were no plans to resume nuclear talks with the United States. Iran cancelled a scheduled 6th round of talks when Israel began its attacks. Meanwhile, Hezbollah's Secretary General says Iran has emerged victorious after the 12-day war with Israel, claiming all of Israel's objectives have been thwarted. Speaking in a televised address, Mr. Naim Qassem said Israel had 3 main goals: destroying Iran's nuclear program, dismantling its missile force, and toppling the Islamic Republic. According to him, none succeeded. Mr. Qassem credited Iran's resilience, saying that the country stood completely alone without allies or supply lines, while facing America's full military and intelligence machine. He added that Iran managed to inflict serious damage on Israel as well. He closed his speech by warning regional countries not to trust U.S. military presence, arguing that the goal is only to serve to protect Israel and not the people of the Middle East. Meanwhile, the United States has signaled it's open to fresh negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program, but only if Tehran agrees to abandon uranium enrichment. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that diplomacy remains the administration's top priority, saying indirect talks through intermediaries, including Qatar, are ongoing. Ms. Leavitt confirmed that the U.S. intelligence community had found no evidence that Iran moved enriched uranium ahead of last Saturday's strikes. She said intelligence agencies monitor the facilities closely and no signs of nuclear material being relocated were found. She added that President Trump is open to hosting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington, although no date has been set.
I think the only other time the United Nations, Israel, Iran, and the United States has agreed on something is that the sky is blue, but they all agree that Iran's nuclear facilities were completely demolished. And I would just like to reemphasize, you mentioned this was a low-confidence preliminary intelligence assessment, and the entirety of that assessment was not leaked to the media. The FBI is investigating to find out who that leaker was because it's illegal, and they should be held accountable for that. Leaked bits and pieces of an intel assessment to push a false narrative. And it's to the same reporter, I will add, Natasha Bertrand of CNN, who has done this in the past. In 2020, it was Natasha Bertrand who had 51 intelligence analysts falsely lie to her, but she still put it on paper for some reason, that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. We all know that's not true, right? We can all agree on that now. That was a lie from the intelligence community. Also in 2020, this same reporter, Natasha Bertrand, wrote that a top intel agency ruled out the man-made lab leak theory of the coronavirus origins. Again, the president was right about that. This reporter wrote a lie from the intelligence community to seek a narrative she wanted to prove, and guess what? We now know that's the truth. Also, in 2024, Bertrand pushed the suckers and losers hoax. She also pushed the fine people hoax, which was taking the president's words purposely out of context. And then last October, and I believe this is notable, Natasha Bertrand published an article in Politico from the intelligence agency. She said that John Ratcliffe was speaking without any evidence when he said Iran was attempting to undermine President Trump's presidential campaign. And then we, of course, found out that was absolutely true. In fact, the Biden administration declassed an intel report which said they had high confidence that Iran had done exactly what Ratcliffe alleged. They did run an influence campaign to hurt President Trump's candidacy. In fact, we know the Iranians tried to take President Trump's life. And so this is a reporter who has been unfortunately used by people who dislike Donald Trump in this government to push fake and false narratives. She should be ashamed of herself. And that's not what reporting is. Journalism is trying to find the facts and the truth. And this week we saw this same reporter being used to push a fake narrative to try to undermine the President of the United States, and more importantly, the brave fighter pilots who conducted one of the most successful operations in United States history. And I think the American people fully know that this operation was a complete and total success.
In the meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump is urging Israel to drop corruption charges against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling on the country to pardon its leader or drop the case altogether. President Trump made the remarks in a post on his social media platform. He linked the issue to U.S. military support for Israel during its conflict with Iran, saying now is the time to save Netanyahu. Mr. Netanyahu, who has been on trial since 2020 for bribery, fraud and breach of trust, thanks Mr. Trump for his tremendous support. On the streets of Tel Aviv, Israeli citizens voiced differing opinions following President Trump's public call to cancel Prime Minister Netanyahu's ongoing corruption trial.
I think they should cancel these trials. I don't know how valid they are or not, but regardless, especially during this time, they should definitely be canceled, postponed. It's been going on too long. It's costing Israelis so much money, and it doesn't make sense. There's so many other places that money should be going to and not these trials.
I think that every person, no matter if it's in a position of power or even a politic, need to be accountable for their actions, and that's it. I want a prime minister who is the right person, who thinks about the country and the consequences of his actions. So I'm against it.
Basically, President Trump can say whatever he wants and say his opinion, but I don't think another country should dictate their processes. If Trump or any other leader said something that they should do. So basically it's Israel's choice and not his. But of course he can say what he thinks, and we also can listen to it.
The cases are kind of small still. I don't think Trump should get involved.
Everybody should be responsible for their things, their crimes, you know? Like, it's not like you can just make it disappear, you know?
To politics in the United States, President Trump is putting pressure on Senate Republicans to pass what he's calling a big, beautiful bill, a sweeping tax reform package he claims will create jobs and cut taxes across the board. Speaking at a White House event, Mr. Trump warned of economic consequences if the bill isn't passed by the July 4 deadline. He promised it will protect or create over 7 million jobs, boost the country's GDP, and lower taxes for American families. Mr. Trump also pledged no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for retirees, in a bid to appeal to working-class voters and seniors. However, despite his bold promises, the bill faces stiff opposition in the Senate. Republican leaders have scheduled a preliminary vote for Friday, but internal disagreements over provisions and revisions may still stall the progress.
I got a call the other day from the people in Congress because we're doing our bill. I didn't even tell you this, Mike, and they called. They said, there's something wrong with the numbers, sir. I said, what's wrong? I don't know. They're not balancing out. There's something really wrong. I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, we don't know. I said, what's the problem? We're taking in much more money than we have scheduled. I said, so far, that sounds good. They said, how much is it? About $80 billion. I said, do me a favor, check the tariff line. They called me back an hour later. Sir, we've taken in $88 billion in tariffs. Isn't that a beautiful thing? $88 billion. According to the Council of Economic Advisors, these reforms will protect or create more than 7 million jobs, add 3.1% to economic growth, reduce taxes for the typical American by nearly 15%, and increase take-home pay for a normal family by an incredible $13,000. All of these things are happening. And by the way, there's no inflation. All of the numbers I gave you, all of the money that's coming in, and maybe more importantly than the billions of dollars we're taking in with tariffs, is the fact that we've got hundreds of plants going up all over the United States that never would have been here. I was with Howard and Scott and Texas Instruments the other day, and the head of Texas Instruments, they're going to spend $60 billion in the United States. And he said, sir, please don't do it to me. And I looked at him, I knew exactly what he meant. He said, you mean tariffs, right? He said, that's right. If you ever get rid of those tariffs, you've cost me a fortune. They're all coming in because they don't want to pay the tariffs, and they're coming in at levels. And it only works for the United States because it doesn't work for other countries, but it works for us. We have a record investment, we have records and everything, and when these places open up, that's bigger than the $15 trillion that I'm talking about. You know, you don't see it right away, but bigger is the fact that they're all coming in, they're building their factories, the AI factories and the auto plants. We have auto plants that are closing up in other countries. I don't want to specifically name the countries, but you know who they are. And they're coming into the U.S. and they're opening up and building like nobody's ever seen anything like it. I don't call it a miracle. I call it, this should have been done 40 years ago. We would have never lost our auto. We lost 50% of our auto industry to China, Mexico, Canada, and various other countries. Should have never happened if you had a president that said, we're going to charge you tariffs. You're not going to build next to us. Send it in and take away our jobs.
Still in the United States, the State Department is hailing NATO allies for committing to a higher defense spending, calling it a win for peace through strength. At a White House briefing, Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott said member nations had agreed to boost military budgets to 5% of GDP by 2035, a move he attributes to President Trump's leadership. Mr. Pigott also confirmed that the U.S. will spend $30 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza. The funds will go to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which officials say has delivered 46 million meals and helped prevent looting by Hamas. He concluded that Mr. Trump's administration spending plan is not just about defense, but about building real strength and protecting lives.
Where allies committed to dramatically increase defense and security spending to 5% of GDP. This landmark pledge reflects a generational shift in NATO's posture, ensuring that NATO has the forces, capabilities, warfighting readiness, and resilience needed to deter and defend against all modern threats. This is peace through strength. It's not just about budgets, it's about building real military power, a stronger industrial base, and interoperability to last. As President Trump said, this is a monumental win for the United States, for Europe, and for the cause of transatlantic peace and prosperity. The President's leadership deserves full credit for the reinvigorating NATO and restoring strategic clarity to the alliance. Secretary Rubio will host the ministerial signing of a peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, right here at the Department of State. This is a significant milestone for peace in the Great Lakes region, and a reminder that peace on paper must be matched by implementation on the ground. Next week, Secretary Rubio will host foreign ministers from Australia, India, and Japan for the 2025 Quad Foreign Ministers meeting on July 1st in Washington, D.C. The Secretary's first diplomatic engagement was with the Quad, and next week's summit builds on that momentum to advance a free, open, and secure Indo-Pacific. So what I can say is we have approved funding for $30 million to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and we call on other countries to also support the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and its critical work. A track record of distributing over 46 million meals distributed to date, all while preventing Hamas looting, is absolutely incredible and should be commended and supported. What I can say is, again, that 46 million meals distributed to date, that's something that should be applauded. We've talked about here in the past different distribution sites that have been opened, but I think this is an example of seeing that aid that has been distributed. And President Trump's commitment, Secretary Rubio implementing that vision here to get aid to the people of Gaza. So we're seeing those 46 million meals, and then we're seeing from there the fact that we're seeing this $30 million approved.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is criticizing what he calls a double standard as some European Union countries continue to import Russian oil while pressuring Ukraine politically. Speaking after a meeting with European Council President Antonio Costa, Mr. Zelensky said Ukraine remains committed to EU values, but warned that critical components still being sent to Russia are ending up in weapons used to attack Ukrainians. Mr. Zelensky proposed a $30 per barrel oil price cap, or at least $45, as a way to undercut Russian war financing. His comments come as EU leaders gather for a one-day summit focused on Middle East tensions, U.S. tariffs, and new sanctions on Moscow. Mr. Zelensky said he would be submitting evidence of European companies aiding Russia's military production and urged the EU to act with unity and resolve.
Now is a truly strong 18th package of EU sanctions against Russia. The key targets should be Russia's oil trade, its shadow tanker fleet, Russian banks and other financial instruments, and the supply chains that bring equipment or parts for making weapons. Some European companies are still sending critical components to Russia. These end up in missiles and other weapons used to kill us, kill Ukrainians. And we are identifying these materials and will pass the evidence to your teams. Please pay attention to this. And we also need to expand sanctions not just against the Russian tankers, but also their captains and the terminals that Russia uses to ship its oil. Russia's military ambitions grow when its oil revenues are high. Over time, we have seen how strongly some European countries still depend on Russian oil. And we understand this, and we act carefully as our partnership with the EU requires. Yet, sadly, we don't always feel the same understanding in return when it comes to Ukraine's needs. It feels especially strange to hear such strong criticism, even political pressure from some leaders, while our respect for EU rules allow oil to keep flowing. And we should all think about that. Either we all follow the same EU rules, or there will be fewer advantages for everyone. The facts are clear. For Russia's appetite for war to shrink, its oil revenues must shrink. So please support further steps to lower the price cap on Russian oil.
And staying with the crisis, the European Union says it is close to finalizing an 18th sanctions package against Russia, but internal divisions remain, with Slovakia refusing to sign off. At the European Council summit, EU President Ursula von der Leyen said that the package aims to increase pressure on Moscow to reach a ceasefire in Ukraine. But Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico says he will veto any deal that phases out Russian oil and gas, warning it will devastate his country's economy. Meanwhile, European Council President Antonio Costa addressed NATO's pledge to spend 5% of GDP on defense. He said EU countries don't need to match that exact figure, but should focus on efficiency and fair burden sharing. Spain has said it will cap defense spending at 2.1%, drawing sharp criticism from President Donald Trump, who threatened trade consequences against Madrid.
Europe welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire. It must be respected by all parties. Restoring stability in the region depends on it, and it depends as well as on Iran's readiness to return to a serious and credible diplomatic process. As you said, Iran must never obtain a nuclear bomb. The negotiating table remains the only viable path forward. At the same time, we cannot lose sight of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which remains abhorrent and unbearable. Humanitarian aid needs to reach Gaza immediately and unimpeded, at speed and at scale. Europe will keep on calling for a sustainable ceasefire and the release of hostages. Politically, we must keep up the pressure on Russia to engage in serious talks, starting with a real ceasefire, and therefore our 18th sanctions package aims to do that. We should be in a position to have an agreed package soon. At the same time, we are also accompanying Ukraine on its EU path. Under relentless fire, Ukraine is passing reform after reform. It's impressive. And this is why the Commission defends the opening of the first cluster of negotiation. Ukraine has delivered. Now we must too. I would like to reiterate my call to the Hungarian authorities to allow the Budapest Pride to go ahead this Saturday.
23 European Union member states decided to spend more. Today, we worked on how to spend better. Investing together, more rationally, more efficiently as a team. Through aggregation of demand, joint procurement, standardization and simplification. Boosting European research, European industry, European jobs, for European security and prosperity. We don't need to replicate the same capabilities in each member state. We don't need to multiply by 27 all our investments in defense. What we need is efficiency and fair burden sharing. The Commission's assessment is clear. Despite the incredibly difficult circumstances, the Ukrainian government is carrying out reforms and in impressive pace. So now is the time to intensify our work and advance on the path towards European Union accession.
Welcome back to the program. UK government has confirmed a U-turn by rebels in its own party over its planned benefits reforms. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall told Labour MPs that claimants of the personal independence payment will continue to receive what they currently get, as will recipients of the health element of universal credit. He claimed planned cuts will only hit future claimants. The government made the climb down after facing prospects of defeat in the Commons if it failed to accommodate the demands of more than 100 backbenchers. Russia's G20 Sherpa Svetlana Lukash says the country is positioning itself within the G20 framework to support developing regions, particularly Africa, in key areas such as energy security, infrastructure investment, and climate resilience. She adds that amid ongoing geopolitical tensions and sanctions, Russia sees its current economic cooperation with African nations as a valuable opportunity to strengthen partnerships and explore new avenues for collaboration.
Priorities are very well placed to achieve also the goals set by Russian Federation in G20. That is promotion of inclusive global growth. That is job creation. That is development of artificial intelligence and approaches to governing artificial intelligence. That is issues of critical minerals, which is important for strengthening both South African and Russian economies.
And we're now in Venice, where residents and tourists have expressed conflicting views as the lagoon city braces for what many call what could be regarded as the wedding of the century, the three-day multi-million-euro nuptials of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and former news anchor Lauren Sanchez. Some praise the couple's approach, while other locals see the event as in an optimistic light for bringing good breath of fresh air to Venice. According to local authorities, 5 of Venice's most luxurious hotels have been fully booked for the event, and at least 30 water taxis have been hired to transport the guests.
Somebody that high profile, I think the crowd they're going to draw is probably not fair to the tourists, especially at the height of tourist season. And they're, you know, if they potentially shut down streets or hotels or shops, it's going to put a strain on, you know, the tourism. It's going to affect the locals and their ability to make money and things like that. So I think it's, you know, you have the money, you can do what you want. You know, if you have enough money to buy whatever you want, you can do what you want. But no, I don't think it's necessarily fair to these people at all, you know, to the tourists or the locals.
Still on the wedding extravaganza of Amazon founder and a billionaire Jeff Bezos and former journalist Lauren Sanchez, which has kicked off in Venice, Italy. The wedding will reportedly cost over $60 million, but the lavish celebration has been shrouded in controversy. Jeff Bezos was reportedly forced to change the venue for his wedding last minute as a local group called No Space for Bezos launched a protest in Venice. For more on this, we are joined by our DW Europe correspondent in Berlin, Germany, Marie Sinner. Marie, great to have you on the show today. Tell us more about the change of plans.
Yeah, this wedding has been a spectacle in 2 ways. On the one hand, there's this major celebrity wedding taking place with guests like Kim Kardashian, Katy Perry, Orlando Bloom. All 5 five-star hotels in the city are fully booked. And on the other side, there are protesters trying to send a signal. Greenpeace raised a huge banner on a Venice square which read, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax." And a protest group called No Space for Bezos announced ahead of the wedding festivities that they want to fill the canal with inflatable crocodiles to prevent wedding guests from entering the city on their yachts. And ultimately, in a way, those protesters succeeded because the location for the wedding party tomorrow was changed from the center of the city to a location more on the outskirts, the Arsenal, which is a former shipyard. And the party was relocated specifically to prevent more protests taking place. So no inflatable crocodiles had to step into action, but protesters did send a floating mannequin of Jeff Bezos attached to a floating Amazon parcel into a Venice canal last night, and there's a big protest march planned tomorrow.
What do they have against the billionaire? Why are the protests so fierce?
Jeff Bezos and his lavish wedding embody a lot of the problems locals in Venice are struggling with. And a lot of the protesters have made sure to emphasize that they don't have a specific problem personally with Jeff Bezos, but that they are protesting against the system that he embodies. For one, they are an emblem of the type of excess that caused the climate crisis. Venice is a city that's disappearing. Rising sea levels mean that a large part of the city could be submerged in 100 years, and there is an irony to billionaires with giant carbon footprints all descending onto a city that's disappearing because of climate change for a big party. And so that's why we're seeing the presence of Greenpeace, for example. And in addition, many see this wedding as the latest example that the city is being reduced to a playground for the ultra-rich and for tourists. The historic city center has lost over half of its population in the last decades, and you have expensive hotels, expensive restaurants, shops, Airbnbs, pushing out the local community, outpricing the local community because they can simply no longer afford it. And it's important to know that this is not a problem, this over-tourism, that's just being faced in Venice, but in all tourism hotspots in Europe, really. So there is a lot of solidarity being felt around Europe with the people of Venice.
And which other places in Europe, struggle with over-tourism?
No, a lot of cities have this problem in France and Spain and Portugal as well, because Europe is by far the most visited region in the world. Italy welcomed more international visitors last year than its entire population. And cheap flights and social media marketing are making this problem more intense. And over-tourism really is causing similar issues in a lot of these cities. Locals being pushed out because of high prices, international chains that are replacing local shops, and the fact that the infrastructure can't support so many visitors. So in Greece, for example, islands are struggling with huge amounts of tourists in the midst of a water scarcity. And some actions are slowly being taken against these problems. Barcelona, for example, wants to phase out all the short-term rental apartments in the city. That's 10,000 short-term rental apartments that are usually rented by tourists, and they're supposed to be given back to the locals for housing to prevent these cities from turning into tourism Disney worlds.
Well, thank you so much, Marie, for your time. Away from Italy, emergency services are working to contain a fast-spreading wildfire near the coastal area of Tamari, southeast of Athens, as strong winds and high temperatures continue to hamper firefighting efforts. Authorities have temporarily closed nearby roads and urged residents to stay indoors due to the heavy smoke, and police vehicles have been deployed to block off access to certain roads. Local media reported that the blaze, fanned by gusty winds, has already scorched several dozen hectares. The full extent of the damage is still being assessed, and cause of the fire is yet to be determined and remains under investigation. Japan has executed a man who murdered 9 people in 2017, the first time since 2022 that the country has enacted capital punishment. The serial killings by Takahiro Shirarishi, dubbed the Twitter killer, had shocked the country and triggered debate over how suicide was discussed online. Shirarishi, then 30, lured his victims, of mostly young women between the ages of 15 and 26, to his apartment before strangling and dismembering them. The killings came to light in October 2017 when police found body parts in the Japanese city of Zama near Tokyo. when they were searching for one of the victims. And UK counter-terrorism police have arrested 4 people after members of a pro-Palestinian campaign group last week broke into the country's largest Royal Air Force base and damaged military aircraft. The police say it had arrested 3 people on suspicion of the commission, preparation or instigation of acts of terrorism. According to a statement by counter-terrorism police in the southeast, the arrests were carried out in Newbury, Berkshire and in London, and all 4 suspects remain in custody. The move comes after members of the Palestine Action Group broke into a an RAF Briz Norton in Oxfordshire and sprayed red paint into the engines of several Voyager aircraft in protest against the UK government's support for Israel's war in Gaza. Meanwhile, UK ministers have since moved to prescribe the campaign group as a terrorist organization under British law, which would make it a criminal offense to belong to or support it, punishable by up to 14 years in prison. An Ecuadorian drug trafficker, Fito, has been recaptured, and after more than a year on the run, marking a significant victory for President Daniel Noboa in his fight against crime and violence affecting the country. Footage shows the moment the army apprehended Jose Adolfo, also known as Fito, who was hiding in a tunnel inside a house in Manta, Manabí province. The recapture announcement was made by the President Daniel Noboa, adding that Ecuador has done what is required to proceed with Fito's extradition to the United States. Fito, leader of the gang Los Choneros, had been on the run since escaping prison in January 2024 and was considered the most wanted criminal in the country. He was serving a 34-year sentence for organized crime, drug trafficking and murder, and had been imprisoned from 2011 until his escape. In the meantime, the country's president has reaffirmed trade relations with the world's leading economic powers during the Summer Davos Forum in Tianjin, China. This gathering brings together global leaders to discuss the main challenges facing the world's economy. The president emphasized that trade has become increasingly dynamic, and as a result, there's a growing demand for storage, including logistics hubs or warehouses in all other countries where goods can be held temporarily before being delivered to their final destinations. He also noted that there's growing demand from major companies and countries to store goods such as fuel and oil in Pacific region in a case of a disruption in the Panama Canal, Suez Canal or Strait of Hormuz, which could prevent goods from reaching their final destinations.
I think our position has been, favorable. We maintain good relations with the U.S., which is our largest trade partner. Number 2 is China. Number 3 is a single country, is Russia, actually. And the European Union together would be number 3, but then we see all the European countries. Some countries like Ecuador, like Costa Rica, like Canada, are becoming storage or trade points that will give, kind of an insurance policy for some nations. And as trade has become very dynamic and there's a lot of challenges right now, is a higher demand for storage, higher demand for warehousing, a higher demand to have inventories in different parts of the world. Just in case you have a disruption in the Panama Canal, you have a disruption in the Suez Canal, or you have a disruption in the Hormuz Strait. So we're seeing a higher demand from large companies and also nations to have grain deposits in the Pacific, to have fuel deposits, to have oil. That is something that we're seeing now that we didn't see that 5, 6, or 10 years ago. And that can tell you a little bit of how some nations are thinking We have a great relationship with the UAE.
Welcome back. A train with a carriage traveling from Pyongyang to Moscow has arrived at the Yaroslavsky station for the first time in 5 years, following the suspension of rail service due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Passenger rail service between the capitals of North Korea and Russia resumed on June 17 when a train departed from Pyongyang. One of its carriages, painted red, white and blue, crossed the border and proceeded to Yurisk as part of train 651 before being attached to the Russia Express train. Officials say the new carriages soon to operate between the capitals are more advanced than previous models, featuring modern facilities. The Pyongyang-Moscow route is recognized as the world's longest direct railway route, spanning over 10,000 kilometers and taking 8 days to complete. Trains will run twice monthly, with passengers accommodated in compartments provided by the DPRK's Ministry of Railways. Tickets will go on sale no earlier than 60 days before departure. It's been 80 years since the signing of the UN Charter, and the General Assembly commemorated the anniversary at an informal plenary meeting. Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed members, saying the Charter has given useful tools to change destinies, save lives, and deliver hope to the most desperate corners of the world.
The Charter has given us the tools to change destinies, save lives, and deliver hope to the most desperate corners of the world. And we can draw a direct line from the creation of the United Nations and the prevention of a third world war. Today we see assaults on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter like never before. On and on we see an all too familiar pattern. Follow when the Charter suits, ignore when it does not. The Charter of the United Nations is not optional. It is not an à la carte menu. It is the bedrock of international relations. We cannot and must not normalize violations of its most basic principles.
A U.S. judge has ruled that using books to train artificial intelligence software is not a violation of U.S. copyright law. The decision came out of a lawsuit brought last year against an AI firm, Anthropic, by 3 authors, including best-selling mystery thriller writer Andrea Bartz, who accused it of stealing her work to train its Claude AI model and build a multi-billion-dollar business. In his ruling, Judge William Alsop said Anthropic's use of the author's books was exceedingly transformative and therefore allowed under U.S. law. But he rejected Anthropic's request to dismiss the case, ruling the firm would have to stand trial over its use of pirated copies to build its library of material. In the meantime, as artificial intelligence continues to reshape industries globally, project managers are being urged to adapt and lead it in this digital shift. At the 2025 National Conference of the Project Management Institute Nigeria, professionals and thought leaders gathered to explore AI's impact on project delivery.
Project management professionals, researchers and industry leaders converge for the 2025 National Conference of the PMI Nigeria chapter in Lagos. With the theme, Navigating the Digital Age, AI and Project Management in Africa's Changing Landscape, the conference zeroes in on how artificial intelligence is reshaping systems, tools and processes within the project management space.
Transforming our lives is transforming our work, and it's transforming our world. From automating processes to forecasting risks to managing resources, AI is reshaping the very foundations of how we deliver projects, and is doing it at a speed that's both thrilling and, let's be honest, something a little terrifying. As project managers, we need to ask ourselves a question: where does that leave us? How do we learn? Do we sit back and hope we don't get replaced by algorithms? Or do we step up, embrace the tools, reskill, where needed, and lead this transformation with wisdom, with empathy, and with vision.
Transformative positive outcome.
Keynote conversations spotlight the need for project managers to not only understand AI, but to actively integrate it into their day-to-day practices.
When we think about AI, it's one of the most transformative tools at our fingertips today. Yet, it is not necessarily new. It has been around for many years in different forms dating back to the 1980s, when the concept of automated project management systems using computer systems for scheduling or analyzing large amounts of project data existed. But AI has evolved over time and has experienced exponential growth in terms of use cases being how you use AI to deliver value in the past 2 to 5 years, as technologies like ChatGPT, Gemini, and even PMI's tool, Infinity, have emerged, changing the way we work. So right now, we're at a pivotal moment because we can use AI not only to deliver quick wins, but to create lasting transformation.
Recognizing AI's role in automating, augmenting, and assisting project workflows, the conference centers on how project managers can adapt and lead in this digital era. The event also offers a platform for experts and emerging leaders to exchange ideas, build connections, and explore innovations impacting project delivery.
One of the 2 criminals involved in the kidnapping that gave the world the term Stockholm Syndrome has died at the age of 78. According to the family, Clark Olofsson died following a lengthy illness. He rose to global notoriety in 1973 following a kidnapping and bank robbery in the Swedish capital. During a 6-day siege, Mr. Olofsson's hostages began to sympathize with him and his accomplice, defending their actions while growing more hostile to the police outside. The incident lends its name to a theorized psychological condition whereby kidnapped victims develop affections for their captors. Mr. Olofsson was a repeat offender and spent much of his life in prison. He was released for the last time in 2018 after serving a sentence for a drug offense in Belgium. And Middle East Rail Congress and Exhibition, co-located with Mobility Live 2025 and eLive, kicked off at the Dubai World Trade Center. Among the participants are the state and private agencies, as well as companies and figures of the smart transportation industry and sustainable technologies. The exhibition featured cutting-edge technology, vehicles from international brands, light helicopters, electric buses and trucks, and off-road vehicles. Dushyant Sharma, the general manager and group head, JBM Group, explained the company is looking aggressively to promote and deploy electric buses in the MENA region. According to reports, the 2-day event hosts more than 250 international brands and over 200 speakers from the most prominent local and international bodies to explore the latest trends in the future of electric and smart mobility.
We are from JBM Electric Vehicles from India. We are here and we are showcasing our all-electric staff bus eBiz Life. This is our first product showcase in the MEA region. We've established our office in this region and we're looking aggressively to promote and deploy electric buses in the MEA region. We have a complete portfolio of electric buses, both 9-meter and 12-meter platforms, across various applications like staff, city bus, coaches, tarmac buses, special purpose vehicles. So we have a complete portfolio. We manufacture our own batteries and we have a complete ecosystem that supports deployment of electric buses seamlessly across various regions.
We are a local-based company here in UAE. We specialize in the fastest entity services, entity development. We do offer a wide spectrum of inspection tools, like equipment for single lines, for double lines, and we also do have robotic systems.
It's a Canadian-based company with subsidiaries in Europe. We design and manufacture alcohol breathalyzers. Products and services provide for law enforcement, automotive, commercial, public, industrial, and private sectors. Those devices can be integrated with third-party cameras or telematics, so fleet manager can get the results in real time and know like what's to do with the driver who fails the test.
Lastly on the program, fully autonomous humanoid robots have competed in a 3-on-3 football final in Beijing, marking a milestone in AI-driven sports technology. The final match was part of the RoboLeague World Robot Soccer League and served as a test event for the 2025 World Humanoid Robot Games. 4 Chinese teams took part, each with 3 robots and 1 substitute. They played 2 halves of 10 minutes. The robots competed without any human control, testing their endurance. The World Humanoid Robot Game is to be the first global event dedicated to humanoid robots. So, who is better at playing football? Humanoids or humans? Well, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.